Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. The Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts is proudly sponsored by the Global Wellness HQ community. It's an online membership group where we meet, we share ideas, we share insights, and we all work together and help one another discover our own personal wellness journeys. If you'd like to join us, you can easily click the link below or scan the QR code, and we love hearing your stories, so we hope to see you in the community. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have Kaur Lass on the show. Kaur, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll talk about Wellness Orbit.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I never really worked anywhere besides 3 years when I had the golden handcuffs. And being an entrepreneur quite often points out one thing: you have to know how to keep your mind well and fit. Otherwise, you get stressed, you burn out, and you get ill. And if you are ill, well, then your business is ill. So that's quite the things that I figured out a long time ago. So my interest has been to figure out how to keep my mind well in all circumstances. And I used to work as a spatial planner for years, and I had a spatial planning orientated company. And there you have a lot of public meetings. And when you stand in front of an audience who is not very friendly always, then, well, you have to deal with attacks. You have to deal with not the physical attacks, but mental attacks. You have to deal with the complicated situations. And to do that, also, I had a very keen interest to figure out first who I am and how can I keep my mind well. And so that's been my kind of center of focus throughout life, to know who I am and how to keep my mind well to be sustainable as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you just can't do it in the long run.
And I think that's one of the things I see. We talk about wellness day in and day out. It's one thing to talk about being physically well. If people aren't taking care of their mental wellness, I think we're seeing things that just aren't sustainable, and we see a lot of burnout. So how did you go from spatial planning to mental wellness? I think that's got to be a fascinating story.
Well, when I was young, my mother worked as a kindergarten teacher. And then when I went to school, she went to work in school. And sooner or later, she figured out that she wants to be a psychologist. So I had a mother who was a psychologist. So the only thing to do here was to marry a psychiatrist. So I ended up marrying a psychiatrist. We were married about 14 years, and we actually founded Wellness Orbit together. And the idea behind it was that we really wanted to find out a point where you are still well and where you can train your mind to stay well. Her interest as a psychiatrist was to figure out a proactive approach to mental health. My interest as an entrepreneur was to figure out how can I benefit for keeping my mind fit and well, so I can thrive in what I do. And then we kind of managed to combine the two, and kind of went on a very difficult journey of figuring out the proactive mental wellness approach, because mostly mental health has been approached as a reactive. When you get ill, you find a psychologist, a psychiatrist. You get a treatment when you are ill. However, when you are ill, you are also out of money. You are out of good relations quite often as well. So the question from our side was, well, why you need to get ill? why you can't actually go and train your mind to stay well. And that was kind of an intriguing question, and it turned out to be a very difficult question to answer. It has taken us kind of 7 years to figure out the path, how to make this proactive mental wellness approach easy to use and understandable for everyone. Because as I said, well, we are very used to train our body, but we are almost not at all used to seek for solutions to train our mind.
I love it. And that's one of my little passion projects. I work with a lot of adults who, they've made all the mistakes, they've ignored their wellness, they've sort of just hoped for the best. And the reality is, I look at it and say, wouldn't it be nice if we taught children how to focus on wellness, if we taught them communication skills, we taught them, mental health skills. It would just be nice if we, instead of fixing broken adults, we just raised well-adjusted humans.
Yes, indeed. And actually, when you look at the whole educational system, basically all around the world, then you see one thing in common. There are two educations that are totally missing. One is intrapersonal education, understanding what is going on within your own mind. And the second is financial education. And when you combine the lack of financial education with the lack of intrapersonal education, what happens is that there is, as we see in today's world, a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies out there. And people buy those very easily because they are not able to distinguish themselves what is true, what is false, and how it influences myself in this situation. And while in looking at mental health or stress, for example, is a very good example. While there are stress and stressors are something outside of you that influences you, like economic crisis or a tough work situation. So actually stress is not about stressors, what happens outside of you, but it's always about what happens inside of you, what happens within your mind. And taking care of stress actually is not about removing stressors around you. It's about removing your own inner reactivity. And there is a lot of difference if you react fastly and subconsciously, or you respond adequately and awarely. And awareness and consciousness is something that we don't much understand in today's world. And thus, the interpersonal domain becomes only observable with awareness. You have to use inner tools to observe what is going on within your mind. You cannot use a ruler or a pencil to write something into your mind. You have to use observation, self-observation. You have to use self-awareness. And those tools actually enable you to understand what is going on within your mind. And for example, when your mind is calm and you are an investor or an entrepreneur and dealing with daily challenges, then you know how to respond adequately. But as soon as your mind becomes reactive, irritated, anxious, then you lose this inner calmness. And when you lose it, basically everyone can manipulate you.
I love that. And I think that's one of the things, when I heard what you do, I wanted to have this conversation. What are some things people can do to find that inner space, that calmness? Because I think a lot of people, when we look at society today, we have a lot of addictions which are outward looking for that sense of peace or joy. What are some things you would suggest? And we can kind of go down that path, but what are some things people can do to find that inner peace without going outside of themselves looking for options?
Well, we very often actually listen to words, we listen to noise. And when you look at the noise, and the world is totally filled with noise. There is a symphonic metal band which I love, Nightwish. And the people can seek up their video, which is called Noise. Nightwish and Noise, Seek It Up. It's really kind of a very cute illustration of 6 minutes of today's world's problems, with all the social media, constant noise going on around us, being kind of a superstar on social media and talking about everything and so on and so on. And your mentality gets really quick and quick and quick and quicker. And then the problem is that we don't pause. Yeah. We don't take the pause to listen to silence. And a very simple thing, for example, what we can do is that we can go to nature. The essence of nature is always calm in the background. Even when there is a storm, there is also a silent aspect of nature in that storm. But very often in the evenings, for example, nature is totally calm. And then we go for a nature walk and we put our headphones on and we listen some music. I mean, that's a little bit kind of a little bit kind of a stupid, sorry to say that, but you should go outside and listen to silence instead of listening to the music and noise that you have around you. I mean, yeah. I love music. You can listen to music if you love it. It's not a problem, but the problem is that if we keep the noise around us 24/7, instead of seeking a noise, we should seek silence. And for example, if we have an open office, we have a noise. If we want people to be productive, we should have a quiet room where people can actually shut themselves into the quietness and listen quietness and then let, for example, creativity to appear from silence. And as we don't understand our interpersonal domains and we don't know how to choose silence among the noise, it's possible, but it demands a lot of mind training first. And it demands actually calming down of different processes within your mind. Our natural inner state is actually a silent state, without words, without emotions. Consciousness as such is silence, basically. It's inner silence. And we are just, I mean, as I said, addicted to noise. So figuring out what is silence within us, figuring out how to reach the silence is one of the key issues. And for example, going out to wild nature and really listening to silence and then observing that the same silence actually exists within your own mind is something beautiful when you come to that realization that, oh, I'm quiet inside.
Right. And I think that's one of the things I've observed, and I'm on a bit of a path of discovery myself. There are people that are almost, I'm going to say, afraid to be alone with the silence and just the voice in their head. I think it's again, I see a lot of people looking to get away from that voice.
Exactly. And we have a section on our homepage where I wrote about solitude. We actually need to be alone from time to time. It's kind of a must if you want to keep your mind well. And it really is about being alone and calm inside. And it's taking a pause. For example, a lot of stress turns into burnout because we don't pause. We don't take so-called pit stops. We just keep running. And it's not sustainable for our mind to keep running. It's not designed for constantly running. It's designed for running short distances, taking a break, and running again a short distance. Yeah. And for example, it's very easy to concentrate up to 45 minutes or up to 1.5 hours, but then usually you need a break. You really need a 15 minutes to 20 minutes to relax, and then you can concentrate again. And if you have a bad concentration, then we have come to today's internet, where basically 1 minute is too long social media video, where you have to kind of jump and do something very sensational to get any attention at all.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we have come to a world where inner calmness is replaced with superficial, fast reactivity. And it makes our minds really ill in a sense that 9 people out of 10 are stressed. 4 people out of 10 burn out. 3 people out of 10 have some mental health issue. It's not sustainable path. So we really need to change it as a society. And for that, we actually we need to learn what is our mind and what is it not. We need to understand what is consciousness. And we need to figure out how to use consciousness in practical situations. And awareness as such is directed consciousness. We are aware of something, and when I say that I'm aware of your picture on my screen, then I'm aware of the picture, but I can be also aware of awareness,
Right.
not your picture. It's my choice where I put my awareness. Is it on object, or is it on awareness itself? And this concept is quite well explained. One of Amazon bestsellers from last year. It's a book called Practical Consciousness by Ingvar Villido. I really recommend to seek up the book and read it. It really explains the inner domain quite well. However, my interest has been to figure out how to explain it to entrepreneurs and employees, how to explain it to a usual Joe in a usual workplace, so that he can understand how I can keep my mind well. Because without really, let's say, workplace-wide understanding of mental wellness, it's really hard to keep good work relations. And for example, I can bring on one very cute example about why really it matters to have a good understanding of your inner domain. People say that there is creative thinking. I say there is no creative thinking. There has never been creative thinking, as there is creativity and thinking, and they are on totally different levels. Thinking is only about what you know, and I have one question only to prove it. Try to think of something that you don't know. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's totally impossible. And what is creativity and innovation? It is about something that you don't know. So, for example, to access creativity, you need inner calmness. Creativity always appears when your mind is quiet. You can access it like at will at any time. But the precondition is your mind have to be quiet. And that's why people say that, well, we wanted to be creative. We had long meetings, and then I went to the bathroom and boom, the idea came.
Yeah.
Why it came? Because it was a quiet moment in the bathroom. Finally, the idea had a chance to appear. But instead of trying to figure out creative thinking, I think we need to figure out how to lead thinking at will, how to stay focused on ideas that we need to think about. How to be focused is one issue that we need to solve. Leading our thought is a second issue we need to solve. And how to have a calm and quiet mind to access creativity is a third issue we need to solve. And when we have solved all the three, then we can have innovative workplace or innovative business.
And I think that's one of the things I see in a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's in the language they use with me. They'll say, oh, I'm too busy for this, I'm too busy for that. And my question is always, what are you busy doing? Because, you know, we can be doing things, or sometimes we need to just be being. And I think that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying is, you know, those moments of inspiration. You know, you can't schedule it and say, I'm going to have an inspiring thought at noon. You know, you can't just work through it and hope that inspiration shows up. One of the things I've found, and, you know, I'm not going to say this perfectly, but when I've done some research into this, they say that those flashes of inspiration only happen when our brain is truly bored. So it's sort of, you know, you've calmed it. I would use your word, calmed it to the point where it can process and tap into that creativity.
Yeah, bored is good. For example, with kids, I have two of them, and when they are bored, they become very creative.
Yep.
Why they become creative is that there is nothing to do. It's kind of a silent, quiet time. And since they can figure out that the napkin can be a wonderful thing to play with.
Yeah.
Then they can figure out that, well, you can draw anything you want on a paper. But if it's noisy, if it's like TV is on, radio is on, music is on, parents are also arguing on a background, and then if you hope that the kid will be creative, well, sorry, it doesn't work this way. Since the kid is anxious instead, he's stressed instead. And so
Exactly.
we see that younger and younger people have mental health issues. And it is exactly because we don't value silence. We don't value quiet time. We don't value actually simple boredom. It actually is something that triggers creativity in a sense, but boredom itself is also emotion. But if you remove the emotion and really have a quiet space within your mind,
Yeah.
then actually creativity is just, you make a request it to appear and it appears. It needs a little training. It's not as simple maybe as I say in the first place, but in the end, once you know it, it is that simple. You just kind of click your fingers and you are creative. You click your fingers and you have an insight. But
I love
it's
that.
about understanding really about how your mind functions.
I love that intentionality. And I think that's one of the things that fascinates me is all of the great creators and inventors in history, they all had a process for getting into that state. Whereas it seems like now, and I saw this in my kids before the world shut down with COVID. We were busy running them around, and we were teaching them to be busy. And then when Canada shut down with COVID, it was almost a nice relief. It was like, oh, we don't have anywhere to be. We started having family Sunday days where we just hang out, we read, we play chess, we play board games. So what are some things people can do to intentionally nurture an environment of that creativity?
Well, it is a quite good question. It sort of depends on the situation, but basically, one of the most easiest thing is to go and walk in nature. Just to calm yourself down, be in contact with nature, be present. Take your family with you, and say that, well, let's have a quiet time in nature. We can talk back home. We can talk later in the car, but let's kind of walk in quiet surroundings and experience quietness inside, and then later on share what we experience. That's kind of one of the ways. But if you, for example, want to train focus and light a candle on your table and watch a flame and measure your time, how long can you keep your focus? 20 seconds, 1 minute. And with focus, I mean before a next thought appears, before next emotion appears, before you run off somewhere else in your mind. The candle is still on the table, but your mind is already galloping somewhere else, chasing rainbows or rabbits somewhere instead of looking at the candle on a table. And in that sense, training your focus is a key here. If you let your awareness to run on monkey mind, then the strongest stimulus that appears hijacks it always. Your mind gets hijacked by strongest stimuli every single time. And that's why when you look at those phones and screens, why they are so attractive is that when you look at social media, there is always next stronger stimuli.
Yeah.
But the question is, if you add more stimuli, what happens to your mind? It becomes overwhelmed, it becomes anxious, it becomes stressed. And when you don't even notice how the stress becomes chronic and how it passes several phases of burnout before you are totally burned out, then you have a problem. And the problem can be illustrated, for example, with this simple fact. All mental health issues happen very slowly. A trained mind is not able to spot them because it lacks the silence with what to compare, that there is a race in your mind. So in that sense, really calming your mind, even if you have a quiet room, just sitting in it, doing nothing for 5 minutes. Well, if you can't do 1 minute, then do something to another 1 minute. And my claim is that you can sit in a quiet place and be without thoughts and emotions for an hour. It's doable. At least for me, it's doable. I didn't come to this point very easily. It took some years to train it, but basically, when my mind is quiet, then actually my body don't get tired. I don't use so much energy. And I feel, well, I can deal with any challenge. Anyone can scream at me, yell at me, do whatever they want. I never lose my calm. But
Yeah.
it's a result of training. And you can't have 1 hour of silence within your mind if you can't have first 1 second or 1 minute of inner calmness. It starts from this first second. And we often kind of don't understand that this inner calmness truly matters. It's prolonging it as much as you can over time until 1 minute becomes 5 minutes, 5 minutes becomes 7 minutes, and 10 minutes, and 15 minutes, and 1 hour. It's not so that I'm constantly thinking and having different emotions that are disturbing me, and then suddenly have 1 hour of inner silence. It never works this way. It is always kind of letting go of emotions. And here again, this book, Practical Consciousness, that I mentioned earlier, is very valuable. There is a technique how to release your emotions in this book. If you read it and apply this technique, it really works. And then when you let go of emotions, which are the strongest distractors, then your next options is to slow down your thinking, to relax your mind, to enjoy actually also mental pause where there are no thoughts. And there actually you find your first second. You can find it in between every 2 words. When I say be calm, there is a pause in between.
Yeah.
We usually, when we read text, we focus on words, but we don't focus on the pause in between words. If we would focus on pause would appear. So we actually, to have this pause, to have this quietness, we need to focus on it.
Love that. And I think what I take away from that, and for a lot of my listeners, I know for a fact they're going to come back and say, but Jeff, I don't have time to spend an hour calmly. And I'm going to counter, and I want to hear your thoughts, but I'm going to counter and say you don't have time to not spend that time getting calm, because that's one of the a lot of entrepreneurs have that shiny object syndrome. They're always chasing squirrels. And if you don't, if you don't take that pause, you're reacting. Sometimes when you take that pause, you say, you know what, that's not a problem for me to solve. That's someone else can deal with that. Or, so I'm going to argue on your behalf that mental wellness is not something we can defer. We didn't get sick overnight. We built up that illness over time, or the discomfort. But what I do love is the purposefulness of it. It's like any muscle. We need to exercise our ability to focus, our ability to be calm. But I would argue it ultimately creates time. What would you say to that?
I agree. It actually creates time. I usually start every day with half an hour or an hour of inner quietness. Just sitting in a quietness. It actually gives me or empowers me to do intensive day later on. If I didn't take this time, I would say that it would be much easier to get irritated. It would be much easier to lose my calm. It would be much easier to get caught in the middle of action and to blame action for having bad action myself. I mean, we usually blame external things for our misfortune.
Yeah.
And if we are on that path, and sooner or later we get stressed, and then we burn out. And it usually is so that stress becomes chronic over years. Burnout happens over like a half a year at least, or several months, even in worse conditions. Usually it happens over several years, which means that if we don't take the time now, then sooner or later we are on this final phase of burnout where we can't raise from a bed. And this final phase of burnout actually has 86 to 92% overlap with depression. So basically, if we get stressed and we don't deal with it, then we get burned out. If we get burnout, we basically already have a depression. And if we are mentally ill, then basically our world is destroyed in a usual sense of getting along normally in the world. So I would argue, as you said, you have to take time now. Otherwise, you have to take years to deal with the results of burnout, or take an end of your life to live with depression. And both are not fun. Both are very hard. And one example that I have seen is that when people burn out, and usually people are not able to go back to the same environment where they were before. They need to step out from a current workplace or the business they were running. They usually give up their whole life to get this good mental wellness back somehow. So it's a heavy price you pay if you don't take the time now. And kind of a paradox of it is that the time is always now. I mean, time as such is just a human construct.
Yeah.
Now is real. Yesterday is something you cannot change. Tomorrow is something that is not yet here. You only live now. So it's just about kind of put things on your calendar. Put an hour of silence every day in your calendar. Put it in little sections or one continuous section. It doesn't really matter, but book time for quietness. Book time for silence. Book time for yourself. And time for yourself is not time of looking social media. Time for yourself is not about talking to others. It is really time for self-observation. It can be also a time to read a book that actually gives you something practical to understand your mind. But unfortunately, I have to say that there are very little that kind of books around. Also, when I look at modern psychology and psychiatry, then most of it is focused on treatment. So we know how to raise to be ill, and we know how to treat illnesses. But what we really need in modern society is actually knowledge how to stay well, to avoid illnesses, to avoid medical help, and to stay well. And I had a kind of a funny thing here. 2 summers ago, I broke my toe in just kind of it was a stupid accident. But I broke my toe, and then I kind of need to take my insurance money, and I figured out that I haven't been ill for 20 years in a row.
Right.
And I really haven't had any physical issues. But the point is that a healthy mind always has a physically healthy body. Vice versa is not true. When we look at those Olympic heroes who win Olympic Games, some are stressed, some are burned out. When we look at people who have achieved a lot in life, but the cost is burnout.
Yeah.
And as my ex-wife, Dr. Kaur Lass, said quite well when she worked in a psychiatric hospital, she didn't see any patients in a psychiatric hospital who had totally fit body. Everybody had some physical issue. How big was a different question, but everyone who had a mental health issue also had some kind of a physical health issue. So my point is that a healthy mind always has a fit body. Even if something is broken, you look how to fix it, you get your toe fixed, you move on with your life. But basically, you don't have so much of a physical health issues because you notice, well, this thing is changing. I need to go and get a massage. This thing is changing. I need to train my body this way. This thing is changing. I need to watch my sleep schedule. Because you notice those things. And again, with what you notice is your awareness. You need to be aware where your awareness is. You need self-observation. And here again, you need intrapersonal skills. You need skills to look within your mind.
I love that. And I think that's, a good insight. I would argue then, and for my listeners, we love to play devil's advocate. But if you're not focused on a well mind, you can spend hours, and that's, people spend hours at the gym. They go, always trying to do better, do more, in our modern age, there's more caffeine consumed than, any human being needs in a lifetime in a day. We're always
Exactly.
trying to do more, and sometimes the answer is in doing less. Setting boundaries, figuring out, when you're most productive, and I think I'm one of those people. I've burnt out in my life, and you get on this stubborn treadmill of, oh, I'll just run faster, and everything will be fine. And it's like, when your body's exhausted, you fall over and you rest and you get up tomorrow and you're better. But when you exhaust your mind, it takes months just to feel that energy level. So I would say for my listeners, if you're starting, and I want to hear your definition of burnout, because I think that's a big topic in amongst my audience. But when you're starting to feel that burnout, now's not the time to do more, because the more you do now, the longer you're going to be recovering from burnout. So what are some of the signs, early warning signs, that people listening to this can say, ooh, danger, the bridge is out ahead?
Well, I would say there are two kinds of stress to start with. There is negative stress. It makes you uncomfortable and you usually do something about it. So most people don't burn out because of a negative stress at all. Most people burn out because of a positive stress. A positive stress is a kind of achievement based. You achieve more and you see that I want to achieve even more. It's kind of addiction to achieve. When you become addicted to achievements instead of living firmly in the present, you have a problem. Because this positive stress leads first to a little bit more caffeine. Later on, it leads to, I don't know, bungee jumping, or kind of taking to try how they used to use parachute, or doing something more extreme. Why it goes to extreme is that you actually burn out your adrenal glands, and it's kind of a physical burnout in the end. You burn out this what keeps you going in a physical body. And in that sense, really taking a step back, calming down helps. But the problem is that when you are addicted to achievement, then addiction is problem. Addiction is mental. Addiction is above all emotional. It's kind of a voice telling you that, well, you have to do a little more and success will follow, instead of realistic things that, well, do what you can today, take a pause, sleep well, eat well, hug your kids, have a great trip over the weekend to nature, come back on Monday morning and continue. And on the evening, go back at home, have a lovely chat with the kids, because they grow up really too fast.
Yes, they do.
Seems like a long time, but they grow up really fast. I mean, 18 years is a long time at one hand, but if you are above 50, as I soon am, and you say that it's a blink of an eye, basically. It doesn't really is. It seems long time, but it's not. And again, why we burn out is the same factor. It's a relative. It's relative speeds that we have. We are trying to match our activities to do more tomorrow than we did yesterday. It's not realistic. We cannot kind of grow exponentially on inner speed and our physical activities. We have to take a pause, relax, and then we can go back and again, play a set, see what happened, look at results in a calm way, analyze, and then consciously continue our activity. And analyzing or kind of a comparing things is again something that awareness allows us to do. You differentiate everything only based on awareness. It's only differentiation tools that a human being has using your awareness. You take one mug and the other mug, and you see how they are different. You don't have to think that, well, this mug is yellow, this mug is red. When you look at those mugs, you know already they are different. And it's looking and knowing is actually using your awareness. You direct your awareness and you compare and you have a picture. You don't need so much mental analysis at all as we are used to. So it's a little bit more about being fully present, observing, noticing, and then acting wisely. I would say act more smart, act more awarely.
I love it. And
be constant at what you do. Continuity matters.
I'm envisioning practicing this awareness with my kids. And I feel like it's a gift that keeps giving to both of us, because number one, I'm teaching them how to be still and to be present. But number two, I'm enjoying that time with them. And I think that's the thing. Everybody's busy doing something. Wouldn't it be nice just to be and enjoy that moment with your child? You know, and I'll admit, you know, in my younger years with my kids, it was like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. We got to go do this. We got to go do that. And I'm working on, we're here. We got all the time in the world. We got nowhere else to be. Let's just be here in this moment. So I think that there's a lot of lessons in this, you know, from a entrepreneur's point of view, but I think it's also really valuable for the parents listening. Now I could talk to you all day, and I promise my audience I never will, but worst case, we'll have you back on another episode and we'll talk more about this. But how can my audience, you know, somebody's listened to you, they like what you're talking about, they want to avoid that burnout. What are some of the ways they can connect with you and maybe work with you?
Well, go to wellnessorbit.com. We have actually a lot of free resources available. We have a free stress test available. You find it on the homepage. We have a lot of blog posts about different aspects of mental health. And I really recommend taking time of reading those blog posts. We have really tried to put forward decent content that really helps people. It's just kind of a reading and seeing how it applies in my own life. So yes, wellnessorbit.com is where you find also my personal contacts. And just visit it and enjoy the content. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And if you want to invite me to somewhere else to speak, or if you want to invite me back, Jeff, I will always be happy to do that, because I really think we need to have a mind health or mental wellness revolution, because we are too focused on doing, as I say, and too little focused on being, and too little focused on quietness. We are too focused on noise. But we need to focus on our essence, and our essence truly is quiet. It's calm. Once we know this quiet and calm center, we can deal with challenges quite successfully, no matter what's the situation. And in that sense, one of the hashtags we used is be the calmest person in the room. And you can also look up social media and write proactive mental wellness. And you find a lot of posts on a topic. Or you can write also mind health revolution. And this hashtag is also something we use. And I think those hashtags actually describes the situation quite well. We need a mind health revolution. We need to understand that mental wellness is about being well.
Yes.
Forget mental and stigma and be well. And once you are well, you can do anything in life. You can have time for kids. You can thrive.
Well, consider me an advocate in your revolution. I think it fascinates me how much time, energy, and money we spend fixing things, where if everybody just paused for a moment, we could eliminate them. And I think that's one of the challenges is, we live in this world of instant gratification, silver bullet, magic solutions. And, we all chase those rather than just pausing and realizing, everything we need is actually right within ourselves. So, Kaur, I just want to thank you for hanging out with me today. This was incredibly valuable for me. And I know I've got some listeners that will want to get to know you. So I'll send them to your blog, but thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks very much for inviting me. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. So thank you, and good luck to everybody who listened. And please take some quiet time before you burn out.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.